Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
The House debates the effects of what Republicans are calling tax reform. The state begins making preparations to drill and frack, and conservatives push to restart executions in North Carolina. Hello, I'm Kelly McCullen. Thanks for watching Legislative Week in Review. The Senate discussed a state tax structure overhaul first this legislative session, but it is the House that has passed the first bill that would change North Carolina's taxation system. It flattens income tax rates, keeps deductions, and will generate less projected state revenue going forward. House Democrats and Republicans sparred over the House Republican version of a state tax structure overhaul bill. Republicans want a 5.9% flat income tax rate, zero taxes on the first $12,000 of everyone's income, a slightly lower sales tax, lower corporate income taxes, and an elimination of the estate tax.
This plan keeps deductions for mortgage, interest, and property tax, and it allows deductions for charitable contributions.
House Democrats oppose the ending of the state's earned income tax credit. They say this legislation will hurt middle and lower income taxpayers in spite of lower tax rates. They say most North Carolinians will see the amount of taxes they pay, and both income and sales taxes rise.
We raised the tax on 990,000 North Carolinians when we removed the earned income tax credit from their benefit. And these are the working families of North Carolina.
Aren't you engaging in a bit of demagoguery with not accurate facts to say 95% of the people are going to get a tax increase when it's probably maybe not the reverse of that, but I would say more than a majority are going to see taxes lowered under this bill.
Democratic efforts to keep the earned income tax credit were unsuccessful. Republicans say the House Democrats don't understand the concept of tax cuts in matching the Democratic claims that the GOP doesn't care for anyone other than the rich.
And I don't begrudge these people. That I actually would love to aspire to their lifestyles. They're good people. They've earned their money. I don't want to punish them, but most of the ones I know actually have felt like they've benefited from North Carolina, and they don't mind doing their part.
This bill lowers the marginal tax rate. It gives us a flat tax rate. It helps people at the bottom, and it also helps to empower people who want to invest in North Carolina.
The House GOP tax reform bill is different from what's being offered by Senate leaders. The Senate wants to lower all tax rates substantially while ending most tax deductions and applying the sales tax to many more services. But the McCrory administration has signed off on the House's version of a more gentle flattening of the state tax structure. Preserving tax breaks, the administration says, would be a better solution. But attention now turns to the Senate's tax reformers. The House and Senate entered negotiations earlier this week on legislation to eventually rework Raleigh's lease of the Dorothea Dix property. The Senate voted to immediately void the current 75-year contract. Its leaders say the deal priced Dix well below market value and offered no mechanisms for revenue to support state mental health services. But the House and McCrory administration both support a one-year negotiation period with Raleigh leaders, preserving that current lease until a new contract can be signed. The House approved its version of legislation aimed at issuing drilling and fracking permits. Critics oppose any idea of issuing permits before state regulations can be written and reviewed. But supporters say this bill shows good faith that North Carolina is and will be energy friendly. The House has approved legislation that would set the guidelines for launching petroleum exploration throughout North Carolina. Supporters of Senate Bill 76 say the drilling debate is over. It's coming, and that this legislation is about setting the stage for launching a brand new state energy sector.
Well, I think we're learning more about the process every day, and we're still working with the Mining Energy Commission to come out with the information to bring back. But I think there's a clear choice. As long as we can move forward in a safe manner, we're going to be drilling in North Carolina.
Opponents say the fracking bill would allow the state to issue drilling permits before final state environmental regulations are approved. Many Democrats say this process is backward and it promotes a dirty industry over the well-being of North Carolinians. They want permitting delayed until federal environmental officials finish research into fracking's environmental impact, especially on water quality. But supporters say no drilling can occur until state lawmakers vote to approve it.
These permits, once they're issued, and that company has bought their land, worked with our citizens to promise them the moon, and we tried thinking in this study, and I'm all for studies, but let the studies take place before you enact legislation.
I'm looking to make sure that we move this process in the right way so that my kids can grow up and feel proud that their dad was part of this, and to make sure that the people in my community know that they were put first in this, foremost.
Representative Paul Tyne says his district enjoys a $1.2 billion tourism economy. It includes Dare County, and he wants more financial insurance for local beach towns that could suffer following an offshore oil rig disaster.
Usually when you take a risk as a business, you are provided some return on that risk for taking a risk as a local community.
There ought to be tremendous economic activity and growth and benefit to the coastal areas of North Carolina based on a service aspect of the offshore efforts.
Senate Bill 76's original provision to allow fracking wastewater to be injected into underground storage has been removed. The House is also proposing study plans to compensate local governments for any effects caused by energy exploration. Those points are not in the Senate's proposal, but don't appear to be deal breakers.
We have a lot of things that we can continue to work on, but on the whole, we're moving forward. There's a couple more committees to go through. I suspect we'll end up in a conference, but we'll get it right in the end.
The House-approved package moves to the Senate. Governor McCrory issued a statement on Senate Bill 76. He says, in part, quote, there is a sense of urgency to begin energy exploration to help create jobs. However, we are also using a deliberate approach that will ensure we do this right in an environmentally responsible way, end quote. A bipartisan House bill will clean the stream of recycled plastics in North Carolina. Some plastics are designed to biodegrade. That can wreak havoc if they get recycled into new plastic products that are not designed to break down naturally.
You get that type of plastic in recyclable plastics. It all gets churned up, turns out a new product, and the carpet starts falling apart, or the seatbelt doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And so this is an effort to make sure that doesn't happen.
The House and Senate have now approved versions of legislation to resume executions and change state execution procedures. Republicans say the Democratic-supported Racial Justice Act of 2009 stopped justice. But Democrats say the repeal of the Racial Justice Act will allow prosecutors to act with racist motives. The final House floor debate on ending the Racial Justice Act was mostly an exercise in political rhetoric. House Republicans say Democrats' 2009 passage of that Racial Justice Act was aimed at ending state executions, not fighting juror bias in capital punishment cases. They labeled it a de facto moratorium.
No one wants actual racial discrimination. What we don't want also is for race to be used as a pretext in order to stop the death penalty, which has been the public policy of this state for those who have committed deliberate, premeditated murder.
Democrats defended the Racial Justice Act on the floor. They say it's being repealed before the state Supreme Court can set legal guidelines that would streamline racial bias claims brought by death row inmates, potentially sorting legitimate from illegitimate claims.
And the North Carolina Supreme Court hasn't even had time to rule on the first two cases, but if they did, they would establish the law for the state if we let them do it, and all the rest of the cases would be resolved, and now we will never know.
Republicans say capital punishment appeals have slowed the execution process by decades, that one death row inmate has been awaiting execution since 1985, and the Racial Justice Act has helped with that delay.
Look at the facts underlying a case. The true intent of the initial Racial Justice Act was to end the death penalty. To put a moratorium on it.
Democrats counter. The Racial Justice Act is holding no hidden agenda and never has. They say the law simply recognizes that North Carolina prosecutors have exhibited racial bias in jury selection and suggests it will continue if the act is repealed, an opinion strongly challenged by Republicans who say anti-capital punishment forces twist local data to accuse honorable prosecutors.
We know that our country has had a long history of racial discrimination in our court system, especially in jury selection, and it dates back 2 centuries. And we've had multiple efforts to address it in 19th century congressional acts and U.S. Supreme Court decisions and the 20th century and even more recently.
The Racial Justice Act's repeal would take effect immediately, as would the legislation's redefinition of suitable drugs that could be used in an execution. Central Prisons leaders would select executioners and confirm for state lawmakers they are trained to administer the lethal injection drugs. But those provisions in this legislation are overshadowed and have been overshadowed by the ending of the Racial Justice Act. The House and Senate have passed legislation to open communication channels between prosecutors and domestic violence treatment centers. House Bill 24 would require that treatment centers tell their local DA when a domestic violence offender has been kicked out of the treatment program. This would replace a current state law that would require every domestic violence abuser's treatment case be reviewed by a court when treatment ends.
This was starting to create a pretty significant backlog with the courts, and so this proposal essentially gets rid of the automatic review but does put in the process where it makes it where if the person essentially fails to comply, it automatically comes back before the court.
Most long-term care facilities drug test their employees. Senator Bill Cook says that's a good reason to make this drug testing policy a statewide law. Senate Bill 542 would require pre-employment drug screenings for long-term and nursing home facility staff. Companies could not be sued for not hiring a job applicant based on a positive drug test.
This bill is designed to protect folks in adult care homes and nursing homes from drug-induced incompetence of their care providers.
This bill has earned House and Senate approval. The House and Senate have both agreed that private college police records should be at least partially open for public scrutiny. Police reports would reveal the time, date, and location of a crime. Charged suspects' identities would also be revealed, as would the identity of the person filing a complaint. Campus police could withhold a victim's identity if a public release could put that person in danger. This bill sits on Governor McCrory's desk. Legislators vote to tighten laws banning synthetic marijuana. House Bill 813 lists chemicals that are banned. State law will now include a broad definition for the synthetic drug. It will cover most any chemicals that create the, quote, high you get from smoking pot or a synthetic version of pot. The House approves closing a Medicaid loophole that Senate Republicans say unfairly warps the free market for pharmacies. Pharmacies could no longer waive Medicaid copayments as an incentive to build customer loyalty. State officials could offer exemptions to this ban for customer hardship, but violators could lose access to Medicaid customers.
A lot of folks are waiving that for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks and getting a big customer base built up. And then, of course, they have them as customers, and they're charging them thereafter for everything else and probably for those Medicaid drugs, too. It says you can't do that. It's an unfair business practice. This simply cleans that up and corrects that and levels the playing field.
The House and Senate agree it's time to reintroduce short-term consumer lending in North Carolina. It's been branded payday lending, and its supporters say the financial times are different today than last decade when such loans were banned. A party-line House vote approved allowing consumer or payday lending companies back into North Carolina. These lenders offer short-term installment loans at high interest rates, but supporters say citizens with bad credit scores deserve a legal outlet to receive loans.
It's easy for us here in this chamber who, can go play banks off each other for a loan rate to tell other people who don't have those alternatives that they shouldn't go get money somewhere. And this is basically their alternative other than knuckles on the corner to go get some money from.
Senate Bill 489 would allow unsecured loans up to $15,000 and interest rates reaching 30%. The loans could run up to 8 years. Opponents say these loans are expensive and consumers who receive them may not understand the interest costs. They also say loan companies peddle additional financial products that gouge unsuspecting borrowers.
These loans are loaded with expensive credit insurance products, which, by the way, are sold to customers with great success, but turn out to be the highest percentage of the money borrowed.
Credit insurance is more expensive than traditional homeowners or life insurance or disability insurance. A lot of consumers that take out these installment loans don't have those types of insurance, and they really want these products.
Loan supporters say these loans allow for smarter budgeting. Unlike credit cards, the loan is made and it's repaid on schedule.
When you get one of these consumer finance loans, you're going to pay it back in 12, 24, 36 months. For people who might have difficulty with credit cards, this is actually a very good option because they can plan their budget knowing how much they have to pay every month.
The bill would restrict low-ranking military personnel from receiving payday loans and requires loan companies to verify a person's military service status. Civilians are not protected under any similar guidelines. The loans could begin being issued this July 1st. The Senate Finance Committee endorses legislation to tell voters the potential costs should they approve a bond. House Bill 248 would require ballots to include the cost of loan interest payments and tax increases that could occur if a bond is passed.
The Taxpayer Debt Information Act has one purpose, and that is to provide more transparency for the citizens regarding bond referendums.
A bipartisan proposal could help homeowners associations and property owners avoid the courtroom. House Bill 278 would encourage legal hearings other than lawsuits when problems cannot be solved within the neighborhood.
The homeowners associations are in favor of it. The bar association is in favor of it. It passed unanimously in the House, and what it does is it encourages or starts the process to allow mitigation instead of litigation when there's a dispute between members of a homeowners association.
Mediation hearings would be scheduled within 1 month of being requested. Property owners could not receive mediation if the dispute concerns the non-payment of HOA dues. The Senate has scheduled a vote on the bill next week. Homeowners associations could also be required soon to protect dues payers from theft and dishonesty. House Bill 793 would require HOAs and professional property managers to purchase fidelity bonds. These bonds reimburse organizations when they get swindled by board members or representatives.
It does protect. It's simply what it is. It's protect against theft and misdoings on a large scale with money, and that's simply all it cares to address, and that's the point of the bill.
The House Transportation Committee approves legislation ending the City of Charlotte's control of the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. The debate is over giving neighboring counties a voice in running that airport versus seizing property from a city that many believe operate that airport efficiently. House Republicans and Democrats resumed debate over legislation that would remove Charlotte City government's oversight of the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Charlotte's new city manager came to Raleigh this week to tell lawmakers Charlotte Douglas operates as a highly efficient city department.
As a city department, this airport has the lowest cost and the largest hub in the nation. And in fact, 7 of the 10 lowest cost and 7 of the 10 largest hubs are in fact city departments.
House Republicans say they offered to create a task force featuring House members, Senate members, and Charlotte City Council members to study this issue. It would create that authority, which would give neighboring counties some board seats. But they say Charlotte officials made a counteroffer that would create a local blue ribbon commission, and that was unacceptable.
That is what we would like to do. Unfortunately, I think what we have to do is go ahead and implement the authority and let those negotiations take out between the authority and the city of Charlotte.
Mecklenburg County Democratic Representative Becky Carney says Charlotte City Council has not held debate or voted to accept Republicans' plans to study any proposed transfer of airport operations.
None of those 11 members have all been given an opportunity to vote as a council to weigh in on, do we want to accept the offer of this study group? They did not know anything about it.
If this bill earns legislative approval, that new regional authority will be created, and with it an 11-member board with members selected from inside and outside Mecklenburg County. The airport's assets and property would be transferred from the city to this authority by state order. All parties say more discussions are coming, but it appears lawmakers may want that regional airport authority created first to give it a seat at the table. The Senate offers quick approval of legislation allowing beer sales in the stands of many professional sports events. State law previously allowed only the Carolina Panthers to offer this service because only stadiums with 60,000 seats qualified. The new seating limit is 3,000 seats.
Which means only the Carolina Panthers can do it. This bill would allow the state's other professional athletic teams to offer their fans the same service.
It violates a fundamental principle of strong alcohol control policy, the recognition that increased access means increased sales, consumption, resulting in increased harms.
It also appears beer enthusiasts could get their growlers refilled at businesses other than the local brewery. Growlers are 64-ounce refillable glass jugs, and current law only allows breweries to fill them. House Bill 829 would let other businesses into the growler filling business. They need an ABC permit. The House and Senate have both easily passed this legislation. Active duty military personnel could receive tuition breaks from state community colleges soon. A House proposal that's moving in the Senate would cap tuition prices at the same dollar amount as federal tuition assistance. The break would help service members who were enrolled in college when they received their deployment order and could not remain in school because they left. They would need to have re-enrolled in community college within 18 months of returning to North Carolina. This bill would cover veterans who pay in-state and out-of-state tuition. The Senate is scheduled to vote next week on a new notification system for university students who foot drag towards graduation. Students who can't earn a 4-year degree within 140 credit hours pay a tuition surcharge. House Bill 255 would require that these students be told they're about to reach that college credit cap. Out-of-state transfer students would not be penalized for the credits they bring into the UNC system. A weeks-long debate over the UNC system's treatment of community college credit transfer hours concludes with legislation. Some House Republican leaders say university campuses are ignoring community college general education class credits taken by transfer students. It requires these students to retake the classes when they reach university. But community college leaders say their transfer students need to complete a full 44 credit hour study program, and many do not before transferring into the university system. This bill simply refocuses efforts on streamlining college transfers, but also tells community college system leaders they must report back to lawmakers. House legislation to change how the state funds transportation projects moved in Senate committee earlier this week. Its supporters say that data and not politics should determine how road money is issued. Some rural county lawmakers worry the data may show a shift where most highway funds go to the cities. The Senate Finance Committee discussed that House proposal that would fundamentally change the funding formula for how state highway money is spent. Mecklenburg County Republican Representative William Brawley's been arguing that objective data and not politics should dictate the spending of transportation money. So far, his colleagues have agreed with him.
Our current sources of funding for transportation are declining, so over the next 10 years, our shortfall of the previous 10 will be $1.7 billion in funding.
House Bill 817 would break down transportation projects into 3 categories: statewide, regional, and the most local, called divisional. Statewide projects cover interstates and major highways, and decisions on which portions of these highways would be upgraded would be determined solely by statistical analysis. At the regional level, data would play a 70% role, with 30% coming from local feedback. At the local divisional level, projects would receive a 50-50 weighting.
The current operational plan that we use dates from 1989, and the technology both for measuring the efficacy of road construction has improved considerably since that time.
The legislation is receiving a skeptical glance by some rural county lawmakers. Data would certainly show that larger cities need highways to reduce traffic congestion, but rural senators aren't elected to represent urban areas, and that's a point they make clear.
Can you tell me how this bill will affect the East? Will we have more or less money for our roads?
What you will have is money for the roads that evaluate well. And Senator, a politically powerful person like yourself, who would probably be able to dominate more than his fair share, would no longer be able to do so, but you'd get your fair share.
Urban Democrats asked why public transit projects would be disqualified from receiving funding from statewide or regional pots of transportation money. House Bill 817 would allow public transit funding to come only from that most local divisional source.
We're talking about trying to get commuter rail from Goldsboro to Raleigh, rail from Raleigh to Durham, Chapel Hill. Charlotte's trying to expand outside of Mecklenburg. Why would we not have at least the possibility of getting regional funding for public transportation?
We have talked about it. The House version had it at the regional level. It's something that we have talked about. I'm of the opinion that the locals in the division would have the better understanding of what's needed in that division.
The transportation funding bill earned over 100 House votes, with Senate Finance Committee offering its endorsement this week. The legislation marches forward. The Piedmont Triad Farmers Market will be renamed soon. The market will honor the memory of former North Carolina Senator Bob Shaw. He served in the U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II, was a former chairman of the Guilford County Board of County Commissioners, and he won the Longleaf Pine Award in 1990. His colleagues say he was a big supporter of the Piedmont Triad Farmers Market. The renaming takes effect immediately.
We are not trying to get credit for Bob Shaw for the farmers market. It's just to name it for him, to honor a distinguished career in public service.
Find us online this weekend. The show is on Facebook at facebook.com/legweek. Our Twitter name is @legweekinreview, and our email address is legweek@unctv.org. That's the show. Thanks for watching.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.